What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Got another Piers Morgan debate coming in. I got Dave Smith. We love Dave Smith around here. This guy, he's a libertarian. He's not a Republican. I'm not a Republican. I'm an independent, but he's a libertarian. But he's knowledgeable on various issues, right? He knows exactly what he's talking about for the most part. When he doesn't, he admits he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. But we're going to get into all kind of topics. We're going to get into Ukraine, what's going on with Donald Trump, because everything that's going on with Donald Trump is absolutely needed right now. And a lot of people are scared because the corporate press, the mainstream news, they're projecting chaos. And, you know, Democrats, they're out there like, oh, we've got a constitutional crisis. But they're the ones making this a constitutional crisis by trying to take away power from the executive branch, which is absurd on its face. You've got all these federal judges out there ruling outside of their authority. Essentially, they're turning into authoritarians, if you will, and while at the same time accusing the Trump administration of being authoritarian, which what authoritarian in history has ever dismantled his own authority? Like, anybody out there, can you answer that right off the jump? But what's up, y'all? We're going to get into this debate, but before we do that, I need y'all to do me a favor, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and check out my regular videos because I cover politics. I break down how we're being manipulated by the corporate press, and they are manipulating just about everything. I think this is why we have such a hyper-polarized society right now, is because of the corporate press manipulating the facts, manipulating the statistics, manipulating the data, manipulating everything to make you believe something that's absolutely not true. But we'll get into all that. We'll get into all that. Y'all share this video anywhere and everywhere you can. That would be great. Join the channel. I've got memberships now, so y'all can go ahead and sign up for that. We give all kind of perks and all kinds of other stuff, but without any further ado, let's get into this thing.
You posted about Fauci when you saw this story. And, you know, in a way, Julie's right. Look, there's a bit of hypocrisy here. I get that. And also people are now trying to use it to flip back to the Fauci immunity issue. But a lot of people feel very strongly about this, that they were basically hoodwinked by the man who was the face of the pandemic defense.
Yeah, well, I feel hoodwinked by Anthony Fauci. Look, I was a college student at that time. I was a college athlete during that time. And living through COVID, the effects of that on the education system, but I mean, to be more specific here on my athletic career, what that looked like. Look, his lies, his negligence, and quite frankly, his greed, it killed innocent Americans. We've seen him testify before Congress, doubling down on these closures and stay-at-home orders and mask mandates for children, despite previously admitting that there's no scientific backing in these actions. So I am someone who certainly believes that Anthony Fauci belongs in jail. I hope we see justice from this. President Trump this morning, I believe on Air Force One, look, he said, it's not by my decision. He said it would be up to a court. You know, they get to ultimately decide if it's null and void. But he even, you know, reiterated the fact Biden didn't have any idea this is taking place. And to Julie's point, you know, she says Biden is alive. We can just ask him. I haven't seen a single thing from Joe Biden since he pardoned his family moments before.
Do we actually know he's? I'm not being funny, but do we actually know he's even alive? I mean, he's just disappeared. The guy has disappeared.
Yes, we do. We do.
Well, we assume he is.
We do, and
right. But I mean, would
well,
anyone?
Actually, I know.
Julie, be honest. Julie,
I know people who've been with him.
Would you genuinely take his word for it over anything he now said, which involved him having to remember stuff that happened a few months ago? Because I wouldn't. I think we saw quite clearly that this is a man.
Piers, I don't think.
Go on.
Listen, I don't think Donald Trump is particularly mentally well. You may agree with me or disagree with me on that.
I couldn't disagree more. Trump to me is exactly the same.
Well, I'm glad. Well,
he's exactly the same. You may not like it. You may not like it, but he's not. He's exactly the same Donald Trump I've known for 20 years. Honestly, it's like the same guy I met on day one.
Well, he's a bit different than the guy that I used to know when I used to be at Fox News all the time.
Really?
So let me tell you, I
Why
think
is he
he's
different?
gone a little bit off the deep. Yes, he is.
Why?
Because he is. He just is.
Tell me.
Because he's not with it the way he used to be. He's
In
just
what way?
not with it the way he used to be. But wait. Okay, I'm sorry. Am I diagnosing like psychiatrist here? I'm telling you right now.
You're the one making the allegation. I see no evidence he's not with it at all.
Okay, listen, Piers. Here's the problem. The problem is that you guys would rather talk about Joe Biden, who has
You just
left
said
the
Donald
scene
Trump is
effectively
mentally
and
unwell. I'm just
talk-
saying, what's the evidence?
Yes.
The guy
yes,
is 78
yes,
years old. He still does 2-hour.
I think somebody.
He does 2-hour press conferences. He does 2-hour rallies. He does endless off-the-cuff media encounters, way more than any of his predecessors. For a guy who's got mental problems, that's pretty bold.
I don't think that. Yes. Just because he's able to have the stamina to do that does not mean that he comports himself as somebody who is mentally well. You and I can agree or disagree on that. The truth of the matter is that you guys would much rather talk about Anthony Fauci, you'd much rather talk about Joe Biden than you talk about what's going on right now, which is that our economy is in the toilet, that Donald Trump has handed over Ukraine to his friend Vladimir Putin, that you showed a clip of the Speaker of the House talking about how he could not believe that Joe Biden cut off LNG exports, which would only help Russia. Well, what else is helping Russia right now? What Mike Johnson is allowing Donald Trump to do, which is to effectively sell Ukraine out to the Kremlin. You guys would rather talk about any of this. You'd rather talk about ancient history from last year.
He hasn't done anything of the sort yet.
He hasn't what?
He hasn't done anything of the sort yet. Trump has not sold anything out to anybody yet. All he's done is bring. All he's done is bring Ukraine to the negotiating table.
Talk about other stuff.
Can I answer that?
We're going to come to Ukraine. So let's.
Okay, so if you want to make the argument that Donald Trump is slowing down, sure, go right ahead. We can debate this back and forth all day. The guy's 78 years old. Of course, he's not the same guy that he was in his 40s, in his 30s, in his 20s. You know, age affects everybody. But to say that he's mentally unwell, tantamount to what Joe Biden is, right? I love how she says, we know Joe Biden is fine. He's not dead, of course. Why? Because the corporate press hasn't reported on it yet? Maybe they're keeping it a secret. See, this is the problem with some of these Democratic pundits. They want you just to believe that, oh, because we haven't seen evidence of this, there's no data to back that up, that it's not true, right? Like, this is a problem going on in this country, that the difference between conspiracy theory and reality is about 6 months. Generally speaking, that's the running joke, right? But I love how they go in on Donald Trump's mentally unwell. Well, if you want to make that argument, you would have to make that argument that he's been mentally unwell his entire life. And if you want to make that argument, sure, fine, go right ahead. But you know what? You're going to sound ridiculous in the process. And this is where the Democratic Party is. They don't have anything because Donald Trump has absolutely taken the party platform from them, because Donald Trump used to be a Democrat, as a matter of fact. So of course, he's sucked up some of the positions that they used to take that they no longer take for some reason, and he's made that part of the MAGA movement. This is why he won such an overwhelming mandate over this past election cycle. And it's so funny that these people make the argument now that, oh, the economy is in the toilet. Just all of a sudden, over a 2-month period, just because we've had regime change, if you want to call it that the economy went from the best it's ever been. Look at the stock market. To back that up, by the way, look at the stock market. The best it's ever been under Joe Biden, to all of a sudden, oh, there's a recession coming. There's a recession. We're already in a recession. This could be worse than the Great Depression. I'm sorry, economies don't change that rapidly. I'm sorry, without significant data to back it up, because there's not. The fact is, the economy's been in the gutter for a while now. As a matter of fact, ever since the pandemic, we have struggled to recover. And Joe Biden's ridiculous policies didn't help none of this. And she goes on to say, oh, well, we're just surrendering Ukraine. What do you mean surrendering Ukraine? Like, hang on. I thought Russia invaded Ukraine. That's right. Russia invaded Ukraine. As a matter of fact, they've already taken what they want from Ukraine. That's my argument, that Putin wanted that land bridge. He just wanted that little strip of land so he could supply Crimea, because why? They have a naval base in Crimea, and that would allow Russia to ship liquid natural gas, LNG, much more easily. They're already starting on infrastructure projects to do so, as a matter of fact. And, there's all kind of reasons we could spout and blah, 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 blah. But we'll get into Ukraine and Russia here in a little bit. For now, let's keep going.
I think that is indicative of the problem the Democrats are in, Batty, because you're trying to work out where are they going to go. They're either going to someone like Newsom, who's performing U-turn after U-turn on what he, persistently stood up for, which was all the woke stuff, or they've got to find someone, haven't they, out there who can be the new Bill Clinton, maybe. Somebody a lot more to the center, who instinctively understands what the average American probably thinks, and who can genuinely take on Trump and then whoever follows Trump. Because, at the moment, I just, if this carries on the way I think it is, the idea the Democrats can win in 2028 is for the birds, I think.
Here's the problem that the Democrats have. Trump has outflanked them to the left on the economy. So he stole what was the Democrats' platform for 100 years, economic protectionism, creating an economy that rewards hard work of working class people, protecting labor through tariffs and through controlling the border by limiting the supply of labor, which of course raises the wages of Americans. This was the Democrats' economic platform since the New Deal. And Trump simply lifted it from them because the Democrats had stopped catering to labor and started catering to the kind of people Michelle Obama's podcast is for, rich women. And because the Democrats don't have an economic platform anymore for the working class, they had to take on Trump with these cultural battles that make them sound insane, like defending the right of men to show their penises to little girls in locker rooms, what Riley was exposed to horrifically. And so Trump found it so easy then to simply say, well, I'm going to be the moderate on this, on all of these social issues. And so he won both on the economic policy, then on the social policy, and then on the foreign policy by stealing the Democrats' anti-war platform. So basically, you have a New Deal Democrat in Trump. And so the Democrats are really struggling. Like, what would you say they stand for now? Well, they say we stand against Trump's abuses of the LGBTQ community. He appointed the highest ranking out gay in American history.
Yeah, it's not going to wash.
It's all nonsense, right? And so
people are not going to buy it.
I'll just end with this, Piers. If I was giving advice to the Democrats, which I would love to do, I don't know why they don't invite me to. I'm a leftist, and I would be very happy to explain their path back to the working class. What they need to do is
You're a MAGA leftist, though, aren't you?
I'm a MAGA leftist. I think this is what they need to do. They need to say Trump is right on the economy. He is creating an economy that is going to reward working class labor, but the Republicans are bad on abortion and they're bad on healthcare. So we will give you immigration control. We will give you the tariffs. We will protect working class labor, but you won't have to worry that abortion is going to become illegal. I mean, that is a winning agenda for the Democrats. Unfortunately, they simply, all they care about now is fighting Trump and fighting Musk. They've lost any interest in actually elevating the working class.
See, Batu, you've got a very interesting voice in this. Well, let me ask you, were you surprised by the reaction to your appearance on Bill Maher?
In the room, you get booed by the audience a lot if you defend any of these things. So I wasn't surprised by that. But I got to tell you, Piers, I have received thousands and thousands of messages from people saying to me, that's what I am. You are what I am. And it's truly humbling. I feel really humbled and grateful to God that he put me in this position to give voice to something so many people feel, and they just don't feel heard. I mean, we're lefties. We would love to still be Democrats. You know, there's nothing preventing that except the Democratic leadership, which is totally not interested in catering to labor anymore. So yeah, I was very surprised by that.
And
now, when I came across this segment, I was completely blown away. I'm like, imagine that. A leftist that has left the cult, essentially, and actually sees what Donald Trump is trying to do in this country. Is it the right course? Yeah, we're not sure if all this tariff trade war stuff is going to actually work, although it appears to be working right now, right? Are we sure that these deportations are going to have the effect that we want them to have? Well, yeah, it's clear to see that, yes, of course it will. Of course it's going to make our communities more safe because we're not going to have these unknown people in our communities, right? These criminal aliens. Not all of these people are bad. However, they're not vetted, so we don't know who they are. And they come in, and Democrats, all they do is just obstruct Donald Trump for the sake of obstructing Donald Trump. And this has put them in a very, very tough position. Now, my next video, as a matter of fact, is going to be exposing the Democratic Party. Once again, blatant hypocrisy over here. Yeah, you're going to have to check that out just for yourself to see that. But needless to say, I was blown away by that. I'm like, holy crap, she's claiming to be a leftist, but still seeing the positive in Donald Trump. This is where America should be. I do not understand how we've gotten to this hyper-partisan position that we've gotten ourselves in, like over the course of, I don't know, ever since Donald Trump came down that escalator, because that's what it's been. Orange Hitler, right? That's all it's been, is the media goes after Donald Trump. Donald Trump does really popular things, and the media takes this narrative that, and they just lie about certain things. All right, this is where we get all these hoaxes surrounding Donald Trump, right? The good people on both sides hoax, right? People actually believe because the media put the narrative out there that Donald Trump called Nazis very fine people, and they cut out the part where he said, but the Nazis and the white supremacists, these people should be condemned totally. He was talking about the protesters on both sides. They were very fine people on both sides, except for the Nazis and the white supremacists. People, but they cut that out. People didn't see that, so they didn't know, unless you watch the full clip. And this is the state of corporate media in this country right now, is manipulate you, cut out what you need to know to give you a complete understanding of the situation, because it's Donald Trump. It's Trump derangement syndrome at its worst. And some people have broken through the freaking veil and actually seen, look, what Donald Trump is doing is popular with these tariffs, right? The corporate press, they get out there and they say, oh, well, it's a tax on you, the American person, when that's actually not true. Well, I say it's not true. It's only partially true, because as we look at these tariffs and the effects of said tariffs, right, what they actually do, and true, it could cause prices to go up on certain items. But what they don't tell you is, right, so he's putting a tariff on China and Mexico and Canada. Now, the Mexican and Canadian tariffs are for a specific reason. He wants to get them to help with the respective borders, right? And that was a tariff put in place as a negotiating tactic to get them to help with the border. Okay, so China, that is because of the large trade deficit and because they import so much goods, right? So what this is going to do essentially is these tariffs, they are meant to make America great again. They are meant to bring manufacturing back to the United States, where we subsidized our manufacturing. We outsourced it to China. He wants to bring that back because we're too heavily reliant on Chinese goods, right? So what he does, he imposes a tariff to make it to where it's cheaper to build a manufacturing plant in the United States, hire United States workers, U.S. citizens to employ, and build whatever you got to build or make whatever you got to make in that factory in the United States, so they don't have to pay those tariffs. But the effects of the tariffs, what that's essentially going to do, and why I say it's not necessarily a tax, is because let's say you have all these goods from all these different countries and they're all roughly the same price. Now, we know how the markets work, right? So he imposes a 25 or 30% tariff on China, whatever it may be, right? So we've got products from different countries, right? So the Chinese product, you would think, or at least going by what the corporate press is going to tell you, that Chinese product is going to go up by 25 or 30%. So what is that going to make you do, right? What are you going to do when you see the price of this one product go up by that much? You're not just going to buy that product, are you? No, you're going to find a competitive product that's the same price as it's always been, and you'll just buy that product instead. So that's going to cause the Chinese product that went up to bring their price back down, because they're going to stop selling those products. That's what those tariffs do. But the corporate press, they lie to you and just say, oh, it's a tax on you, when that's absolutely not true. They need to stay competitive in the markets, right? So they're going to absorb a lot of that tariff. And this is where we get into a problem with a lot of leftists, right? And this is why she is on board with this, is because they're always talking about tax the rich and tax the corporations. That's what Trump is doing, as a matter of fact, with these tariffs. It just so happens to be foreign corporations and foreign wealthy people, just not Americans, right? Because why? He wants to make America great again. And trickle-down economics, these people will lie to you and say, oh, it doesn't work, but it's always in effect. Always, regardless. I don't care what anybody tells you. Trickle-down economics is always going to be in play. You know, it depends upon to what degree it is in play, whether it's effective or not, right? But it's always in effect. So, you know, rich people having more money, they'll share that wealth. Not as much as you might think. I know that might sound ridiculous, but if they have disposable income, they're more willing to separate themselves from that income than they are. They would rather share it with the community than share it with the government, right? I don't care about taxing wealth myself, because for the simple fact that I don't want these people to have to be forced to give their wealth to the government. That makes absolutely no sense. The government is not Robin Hood. They are not going to take from the wealthy and give to the poor. They're going to keep it for themselves and then create these programs to help you that only keeps you dependent on the government. That's the point. And these people just suck that right up, and they're like, yes, bigger government so they can take money from the rich. Sounds nice, but when you actually think a couple of layers deep on that, you come to realize that, hang on, that's not that great of an idea. But let's keep going before I rant on forever.
Ryan's point that Putin has set a number of red lines during this war with Ukraine, all of which we've ignored. And guess what? He hasn't let his nukes off at anyone, having threatened to every single time. So the guy uses
He's
red
still
lines.
a politician.
He uses red lines as a political comfort blanket. And actually, sometimes you got to call people like him and their bluff, because he's not an Islamic fundamentalist. He's not going to blow himself up for the cause. He's got $200 billion worth of assets, which he thoroughly enjoys.
But he might invade Ukraine.
Well,
but
he might, and
invade
he did.
Ukraine. Sometimes you have to call them a bluff, and sometimes maybe you shouldn't.
All right, Julie, we are where we are. I mean, I kind of agree with Dave there, and he's right to quote my brother, because my brother said from day one, you know, you realise that there's no way Ukraine can win this war, right? I mean, you do understand that. And now we are where we are. What is pretty clear to everybody, Ukraine cannot win the war.
Well, here's where we are. If you want to talk about treaties that were on the table, your country, mine, peers, back in the early 90s, signed a treaty with Ukraine, effectively saying to them that if they gave up their nuclear weapons, and at the time of the dissolution of the Soviet Union, Ukraine had the third largest nuclear stockpile after Russia and the United States. We told them that if they gave up their nukes, we would protect their sovereignty and territorial integrity. That was a commitment that the United Kingdom and the United States made together to Ukraine.
I mean, you're right.
Me, it was the Soviet
You're
nukes
right. There were Soviet nuclear weapons on Ukraine's soil.
So, okay, so they're not their nukes. They're also not Russia's nukes, because those were all 15 Soviet republics, and there was a Soviet Union that was dissolved. So there was Kazakhstan. This is something I actually have a graduate degree in, so trust me on this one. There was Kazakhstan, there was Ukraine, and there was Russia, right? There were 3 Soviet republics which housed the Soviet nuclear stockpile. In order to have Kazakhstan and Ukraine give up their nukes, we assured them that we would protect their sovereignty and territorial integrity. So that's not debatable. It was their nukes in as much as they were Russia's nukes.
That is true.
All right. So what the lesson that we're showing to the world now, and not just to the good guys, but also to people like Saudi Arabia, who I would not necessarily call a good guy, although we have a love-hate relationship with them, to the Egyptians, certainly to the Iranians, to the Taiwanese, and others, that if you think that the United States is going to protect you with its nuclear umbrella, think again, because we go back on our word. And therefore, as a result, you might as well go nuclear, because the only way that you can protect your sovereignty and territorial integrity is if you have your own nuclear umbrella.
Well, funny enough,
that is the position. That is the position in which we find ourselves now. Now, if you think that that's going to make us any safer, and if Donald Trump thinks that the quote-unquote big beautiful ocean can protect us from the ICBMs and the mid-range nuclear weapons that could be delivered in New York City within moments, he's smoking something. And so I want to be very clear that what we have done in Ukraine has made the United States so much more imperiled. And the same with Great Britain and the same with the European continent. So
well, I don't agree because
like it or hate it,
I don't agree
that's what's happening right now.
Well, I don't agree with you because we actually have more nuclear weapons combined than Russia does, and that there right there's the deterrent.
I'm not talking about Russia. I'm talking about all these third-tier countries that are now going to go nuclear.
Well,
right?
I agree.
You're
I
going to
agree
make sure that some Saudi
I agree that's a
fundamentalists-
concern because I actually, Zelensky told me only 3 weeks ago he wished he had a nuclear weapon because then he wouldn't have been invaded. I think it's a perfectly valid point. We've got.
I just love this idea of these people and their appeal to authority constantly. Oh, I know a thing, so you should trust me. I have a degree in said thing. And then goes on this insane diatribe about how we should be the energy supplier for the Ukrainian meat grinder, for crying out loud, completely ignoring that. Yes, Ukraine only has a supply, a limited supply of people that they can throw into said meat grinder, and you guys just want to continue throw people into this meat grinder until the bloody end, quote unquote, right? I just can't see that. Why not try peace, right? So what if Ukraine has to give up some territory? Guess what? They already don't have that territory. As a matter of fact, Russia's already taken that territory. Not saying that's justified, not saying he should have done the thing that he's done. But currently, right now, it would take the United States military going in to root out Russia from this area. We can't just make them leave, right? But so we have a chance right now to negotiate some of that land back to Ukraine. I think we should take that. A lot of Democrats are going to say, oh, well, Trump is surrendering democracy. Yeah, because he's not a Democrat. And we don't care about your democracy, your lame brain communist ideas of what democracy should be. We don't care about that. Fighting to the last man, of course, that's insane. You might think, oh, well, that's honorable. No, that's ridiculous. There's a fine line between honor and stupidity. Right? It's just crazy to think that this is a great idea. And oh, we need to bring Ukraine under our nuclear umbrella. Like, I just don't get this idea. They keep throwing this idea of this treaty out there. Oh, we had this treaty that we would protect them for some reason. Well, you know what? That was 30 years ago. And I know time doesn't necessarily change treaties, but, situations do. As a matter of fact, there has been a governmental coup that happened in Ukraine, actually, that was funded by the United States. Come on, anybody. Do we not think that that's not a red flag to Russia? We pretend over here that Russia doesn't have security interests in that area, but we do. Oh, we should respect our own security interests and just ignore theirs for some reason. Why? They have their own interests, right? This is competing interests that we're dealing with. However, the only problem with this is we're on the whole other side of the world. We actually don't have security interests for the United States in Ukraine. We have zero whatsoever in Ukraine. You might say, oh, well, Europe. Yeah, that's on the outer edge of Europe. So, yeah, I think status quo pre-2022 is a lot better than the status quo of today, just continually throwing Ukrainian soldiers into the meat grinder. And they're conscripting, they've run out of military-age men, so now they're conscripting women and old men to fight on the front lines. Don't we find that to be a bit absurd? Like, don't we find that, sure, fight to the last man, honorable, fine, whatever, but don't you think that it would be okay to try to squeeze some negotiations in there, maybe get a peace deal, like a ceasefire could, maybe furtherance of this ceasefire that we already have, that Donald Trump has already worked out? He's already gotten Russia to stop bombing energy infrastructure. Why can't we continue this? And I just love this argument that she's trying to make. Oh, well, Donald Trump's ridiculous if he thinks that this big, beautiful ocean is going to protect us from nukes. Like, think about that for a second. The nukes aren't going to come from the ocean. They're going to come from over Canada because that's the shortest route. But, you know, that's neither here nor there, right? These people would be the cause of that, as a matter of fact, continuing to fund Ukraine, which eventually is going to get NATO troops involved. That's what these people want to do, essentially. That would be the only reason that nukes would start flying. That's what Donald Trump is trying to prevent. So that argument falls flat. As a matter of fact, it has no ground in reality whatsoever that, oh, the nukes are going to start flying for some reason if we're trying to negotiate peace, which is what Donald Trump is doing. These people make no rational sense whatsoever. It's completely divorced from logic, as a matter of fact, and I just don't understand where they're coming from. But this is why Democrats lose. They don't have logic on their side. They've completely abandoned logic for the virtue signal position, I guess, because that's all they're doing. They're making emotional arguments, flailing about like blah, 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 emotions. That's all they seem to be doing these days, right? Because that's all we're getting from them. They're losing on every single front because their positions make obviously no sense, because they don't have an ideology that they're adhering to. They're just adhering to whatever that is of the day, and it changes on a whim. Think about what's going on right now with Tesla. That makes no sense for the left, the side of climate change, to be firebombing Tesla dealerships, for crying out loud. Like, what sense does that make? None. None whatsoever. The supposed, savior of the planet, electric cars, they're firebombing the dealerships, and they're vandalizing Teslas all over the country. And for what reason? Political reasons, as a matter of fact, because they don't like what Elon Musk, the owner of Tesla, is doing. Why go after the cars he makes? What sense does that make? It doesn't make sense. And this is why the Democratic Party will continue to lose until they abandon this nonsense, they abandon this insanity, and try to get back to some semblance of normality, of actual good policy positions that benefit the American people. They're going to continue to get smacked in every single election until they do so. They can try to sabotage anything and everything, but it's not going to work. It is absolutely not going to work, because the truth always comes out about all of this, which it will come out on my next video. So y'all make sure and stay tuned for that. But that's all I got on this one. Y'all don't forget to smash that like button. Share this video anywhere and everywhere you can. And y'all let me know what y'all think about all of this down in the comment section. Do you think I'm wrong? Do you think I'm right? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know your arguments down in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you guys. But that's all I got on this one. I want to thank everybody for watching. And y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.